For decades in Kenya, there's been this painful secret, kind of hiding in plain sight. It's this incredible story about love and abandonment and a search for identity that stretches all the way across continents. So, let's get into it. How this really human story is now finally being pieced together by this wild combination of science and the law. Just imagine that for a second. Growing up, and that's the final word you get on your father's story. He was dead. For a whole lot of kids in Kenya, kids born near a British Army base, this was their reality. A simple, tragic, clean explanation for a missing parent. But here's the thing. As it turns out, it often wasn't the truth at all. So, let's unpack this. Where does a mystery like this even begin? And, maybe more importantly, what on earth has changed that's making it possible to find these men now? Okay, so our story starts right here, in a town called Nanyuki in Kenya. This place is home to Batuk. That's a major training base for the British Army. And we're talking for over half a century. Thousands and thousands of soldiers have been cycling through this town every single year. They've just become part of the local landscape. But with that constant presence came a really painful consequence. Relationships would form, children were born, and then the soldiers' tours would end, and they'd disappear. They'd just leave, leaving behind mothers who were often struggling in poverty and kids with this massive, unanswered question hanging over their entire lives. Who is my father? And for years, it just seemed like there was no answer. It was just an impossible situation. But now, a powerful new tool, think of it like a DNA dragnet, has started to untangle this whole decades-old problem.
See, this isn't just a story about loss. It's also about some incredible determination. You've got a UK solicitor, James Netto, and a Kenyan lawyer, Kelvin Kubai, and they basically decided to take on these cases that everyone thought were impossible. They showed up armed with literally a suitcase full of DNA kits and a completely new idea. And what's so wild about this is just how pioneering it all is. James Netto himself said it. Nothing like this has ever been done before. Using commercial DNA testing on this kind of scale in the UK court system, totally uncharted territory. They were literally making it up as they went along, breaking new ground.
So you're probably wondering, how does this actually work? Well, it's this really brilliant four-step process. Okay, step 1, they go to Kenya and collect DNA samples. Step 2, they upload those samples to commercial sites, like Ancestry.com. Then, step 3, they start looking for matches. We're not just talking about the father, they're looking for second cousins, great aunts, anyone who can help them build out a family tree. And then the final step, step 4, they take all that information and use it to go to the UK courts and basically say, hey, we think this is the guy, to compel him to take a definitive paternity test.
And the key to this whole thing working? It's the sheer scale. We're talking about a database with nearly 30 million genetic profiles. 30 million! When the pool is that massive, it becomes almost impossible for someone to just be a ghost in the system. And think about this. Some distant relative's simple curiosity, I wonder what my heritage is, can suddenly unlock this life-changing secret for a family an entire ocean away. It's amazing.
Okay, so this clever idea is one thing, but what about actual results? What happens when the dots finally get connected for these families?
And yeah, the results are pretty stunning. They've documented over 100 cases so far. Out of those, they've already identified 20 fathers just through this DNA process. And get this, 12 of those have been legally confirmed. We're talking confirmed by the UK's highest family court judge. These aren't just stats on a chart, right? Every single one of those numbers is a life that's been completely changed. So what does that legal confirmation actually mean? Well, it's huge. It's not just about finally knowing a name. It's about identity for sure, but it also opens up some very real doors. For many, it's a pathway to British citizenship, and for anyone still under 18 or in school, it means they have a legal right to child support. That's a potential path out of the poverty so many of them have known their whole lives. But here's where it gets complicated, because finding a father and having a father, well, those can be two very, very different things. The DNA result is really just the beginning of what is often a super emotional and pretty messy journey.
Let's look at the story of Yvonne. She's 18. Her whole life she believed her father, a British soldier, was dead. Simple as that. Then the DNA test comes back, and it reveals this stunning truth. Her father is alive. He's living in the UK. The entire foundation of her story just wasn't true.
And what happened next is just heartbreaking. Her father actively avoided the legal process. I mean, he breached 5 different court orders before he finally took the test that proved he was her dad. But even with that absolute legal proof, the outcome was just plain rejection. He does not want to have any contact with her.
Or take a little boy named Edward. He's 9. His skin is lighter than his classmates, and it makes him stand out. His mom, Nasibo, says the other kids bully him. They call him the British colonizer. Can you imagine? It's this awful daily reminder of a heritage he doesn't understand, and a father he's never ever met.
And just like with Yvonne, finding the answer didn't lead to a connection. Edward's father has been found, they know where he is, but he specifically told the lawyer, "Do not share my contact details with my son." So for this little boy, finding the answer has just led to a much more personal, much more painful form of rejection.
But it's important to know that not every story ends like that. Let me tell you about Kathy. She's 20 now, and she talks about this deep loneliness she had growing up, that feeling that a huge part of who you are is just a total mystery. Her search really came from this place of just needing to know.
And when they found her father, a man named Phil, his story, well, it added a whole new layer of complexity. It turns out he hadn't just vanished. After he left the army, he really struggled. He had a hard time adjusting to civilian life, and he ended up facing homelessness and serious mental health issues. He says he lost her mom's contact info, and in all that turmoil, he just missed her attempts to try and find him.
So now they're reconnected. And Phil is just filled with regret. You can hear it in his voice, but he's also hopeful. He talks about the weight of all that lost time, but he's also committed to making it right now. He's in touch with Kathy. He's helping her financially. And the two of them are, they're slowly and carefully trying to build a relationship. So you see these individual stories, right? From really painful rejection to these fragile, hopeful reconnections. And it all starts to raise a much bigger question. When you see a pattern like this that's been going on for decades, who is ultimately accountable? And this isn't just a small issue anymore. It has reached the absolute highest levels. Just last year, a Kenyan parliamentary inquiry looked into this, and they did not mince words. They straight up accused British soldiers of operating with a culture of impunity. They cited everything from sexual abuse to, yes, the abandonment of children. And they called for brand new ways to hold these soldiers accountable.
Now, what's really fascinating here is to watch the official response from the UK start to change. At first, the Ministry of Defense had this very hands-off stance. They basically said, hey, consensual relationships aren't against policy, we're not investigating. But as more and more of these stories came out, that position did a complete 180. Now their official line is that they're deeply concerned by the allegations and that abandoning your kid is unacceptable. Which brings us to our final and maybe most crucial question. We have this incredible combination of science and law that's literally rewriting people's personal histories, uncovering these truths that have been buried for so long. But as the past is dug up, one person at a time, who's responsible for the future? Who bears the responsibility for building a better, more accountable world for these children?